So here aboard Yara, we drink a lot of sparkling water. And we saw a really great video that explained how to make your own soda water system for a cruiser who lives aboard. So did some research and looked at the parts that they recommended online, and actually ended up finding a local brewery place that you go in and they set you up to do your own home brewing system and everything, that actually does the same thing for sparkling water. So we ended up just like a one-shop stop, which is amazing, and it was just a local place. So I don't know if they have those everywhere, but if so, it's totally worth it. But we will also link the video in our description and whatnot that has the parts and things like that. Here we have the system that we got. We got a 5-pound CO2 reservoir, a regulator, hose with the attachment. We ended up upgrading to the stainless steel rather than a plastic one that plugs onto, that you screw your bottles onto. So it's about the size of like a 2-liter bottle cap. We're in our samples, you'll see, but they're not 2-liter size. They're more like individual size. But I'm sure we'll get some 2 liters and do the same thing we did that you'll see later on in the video. However, this is our new system. So this can be refilled at any place that you would have a CO2 refilled. So wherever a local restaurant would refill their CO2 containers, you can have yours refilled usually. So it is pretty accessible. Here we have the system that we had all set up for us, that they just did for us, which is great. But Emily and Clark, on their video, their description, they have links to each individual piece that you would need to set this up. So you can get it online. Whether or not it's available, each part is available or anything like that, you might have to find comparable things of that nature, but at least it can give you like an idea of what each part you would want if you wanted to piece it together individually, which might be more cost effective too. So why are we doing this? We are doing this because we spend a lot of money on these. I mean, when you think about how many, weekly I buy 2 cases of these, it adds up every week. Whereas this can make many sparkling water bottles without having to be refilled. And then when it is refilled, it's not nearly as expensive. So we're excited to report back later on the actual how much usage we used over a certain amount of time. Emily and Clark, they said they use about 1 pound a year, and they do food preservation and they do the soda waters. They usually just do a 2-liter at a time. We have littler bottles, and I'm sure we'll do an array of things and all sorts of things. But this is what we got so far. So let's dive into our first time using our new system.
So there's no bubbles as of yet. But what we'll do is we'll give this about 4 hours to see what it does and how it progresses. This bottle, let's put on overnight. So we'll open our supply. It definitely tightens the bottle when you release the gas into it. But let's leave this one sitting overnight. And we're still at the 35 psi on our regulator here. I'm actually going to crank that up a bit. Let's crank that up a bit, because that could be part of our problem. So let's pull it out like that, and then watch our dial here. I'm gonna crank it up to like 45. Let's see. If I crank it up, is there any more bubbles that come? Yeah, a little bit. Cool. Yeah, so one of the guys at the homebrew supply store where we got this from said, like, you need to run it overnight at 35 psi, but now I've got it up to like over 45. So I'm gonna do the double whammy, overnight and increase the psi. So we'll check in tomorrow morning. Use this wrench to get it off. Ooh, now that one is fizzy. Haha, nice. So more time and more pressure worked well for this one. Be right back. Alright, so one of the things we're gonna do is use one of our carbonated waters, take one of the bottles and flavor it. And so we have this pineapple here, pineapple core, and then what the heck, maybe a few cherries for good measure. So I'm just gonna cut the pineapple up and core it with this device, and then I'll muddle it up a little bit and pour some fresh pineapple juice into our still water that will then put on the carbonizer. Carbonator. Let's get that going. Got the pineapple cut. Was pretty easy to use this pineapple core tool. We let the pineapples sit out a little too long, so there was quite a lot of brown spots. But I tasted them and they just didn't taste very good. They were okay. They were edible, but I tried to cut out most of the brown spots. But I did it on this plate, so now we have plenty of juice to just pour into our little bottle here. And then I'm gonna stuff a few chunks in there for good measure. Okay, we got our pineapple juice and a few chunks in our bottle here. And for good measure, I also cut up a few of these Rainier cherries to include them in there as well. So we'll just see if the carbonation system and this will actually carbonate it, and if it works out, we have a fun new drink to try. But any kind of fruit in there, really. Yeah, so we'll get this on the carbonator and then let it do its thing, and we will include it in the taste test.
Okay, so here we are. We've done 4 separate tests, and now we get to do the testing to see. So the first one that we did was the 4 hours at 35 psi, and you can see there's some bubbles in there. It's not really easy to see, but there is some in there. So now let's crack her open and see how she tastes. Tiny bit. Then we did an overnight one for 9 hours, which yet again has this, a few bubbles, but so then let's crack this one open and see how it is. Ooh, a little more happened. Yeah, has a better. Then we bumped, and this was at 9 hours at 45 psi. Then we just bumped it up to 50 psi and did it for 2 hours. And that is this one. Looks pretty bubbly. Let's open her up. Sounds crispy. Very good, very good. Super crispy, super crisp. So then let's try our fruit one. So this one was at 50, it was probably a little over 2 hours. And it is really intense. So let's see. Hopefully it doesn't make a mess. Do a little bit at a time. It's bubbling. It's so carbonated. So let's give it a try. See how it tastes. Oh, that is refreshing. You taste the pineapple and the cherry. It's got a great crisp carbonated flavor to it. Ooh. So, what we learned is has to be 50 psi. Cannot be under PS. I mean, we did the one for 45 for 9 hours and it was like okay, but basically I'm just gonna go put this back on, both of these two. I'm gonna try this one that doesn't really have any carbonation in it, really. It's kind of like zero carbo. That's the 4-hour one that we did at 35. I'm gonna put it on for an hour. Maybe I'll let it go flat first, completely, and then, I mean, because there's a tiny amount of bubbles in there. But yeah, we'll carbonate these guys back up. But we now know the standard is for sure 50 psi, and 2 hours, a little over 2 hours, really carbonates good. And exactly 2 hours is also just equally wonderful. So we have our own carbonated water. On a boat, one of the most important things is storage. So how are we gonna keep this regulator from getting tossed around and cracked and things of that nature? So we'll show you what we're gonna do to keep it stored safe.
So, in order to keep our regulator assembly safe and secure and organized, we just went to Harbor Freight and bought a cheapy off-brand Pelican style case. So it says it's waterproof, dustproof, stuff like that, but what we really like is it's small and it'll keep everything in one place. And this was not cheap, not super expensive, not cheap, but plasticky. And so the idea will be to, with this Pelican case, there's these little score marks in here. So you can put whatever you want in here and then pick out the little blocks that you don't need. And then that's a custom fit for whatever you're storing. So for this, we're gonna have to store it in here like that, because it's too tall to fit that way. So it will have to be stored down like that, which is fine. And then we'll keep our hose in here too, somehow. So, but they'll fit in there together. So now we just need to mark how we want to pick out the little blocks and get it stored away. So the actual kit itself came with everything we needed. It was such a great experience there. So what we're doing first is this hose goes from the regulator, and I'm going to position the hose clamp here to where we can still move this dial. So I'll probably spin it around and do it down there like that. Yeah, so let's do it like that. So the hose clamp will just go on the end of this nipple here, and then we'll tighten it up and we'll show you guys how that looks in a second.
So now that it's all assembled,
yeah, the only assembly we had to do was take this hose clamp from the tube and put it on the regulator. That was it. So now we just want to position it in our case here, right, babe? Mm-hmm. How do we got to do it? Make sure that it's in here nice and secure.
So you put it where you want it, and then you trace it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have
and then you pick out the little.
And then and then after you trace it, we've got a white pen here.
Yeah.
And then after you trace it, then you pick out the things and then put it in. So let's get to doing it.
Oh, interesting. There's another I see. Okay, so you can take it all the way out, go all the way through. There's still more foam down there. Nice. Okay. One Mickey ear. Right, Samantha? Pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
I've never done this before.
Mm-hmm. All right, here it is.
Yeah, so we, of course, traced it, cut out all the little foam blocks that we didn't need, and then it just fits in there really nice. We got the end part over here tucked in.
Where's the O-rings, the extra O-rings?
Oh yeah, we did buy some extra O-rings for the end of this piece here, so those can be just tucked in right there, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And then, yeah, it closes nicely. It's secure.
Not rocking around in there.
So now our expensive regulator assembly is nice and protected.
And there's sparkling water as long as there's water. And CO2 in the tank.
Please remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss an episode.